Welcome, everyone, to the Ghost Helpers podcast. I'm your host, Tina Erwin, and the head ghost helper, I guess. And I have with me today my friend, Chloe Scolaro. And she is someone who has read several books, including the Psychic Children, Psychic People book. And I'm going to ask her to share a little bit about how we connected. And then she's going to launch into some questions she had that I thought were so pertinent that many people might like to hear those answers or a discussion about them. So, Chloe, take it away.
Hi, Tina. My name's Chloe. I read your Psychic People, Psychic Children book, and I loved it. I thought it was so helpful. That's not the only book I've read of yours either. The Light Workers Everyday Karma, that was a good one as well. It's very helpful. I reached out to Tina and just had some own personal development questions. And one of the big bridges that I see that I think should be more prevalent in the spiritual community is the bridge between psychic ability and mental health and anxiety and just modern day, because nowadays there's a huge mental health epidemic. People are talking about things that they've never talked about before that have always really been there, and something that I kind of feel like is missing in the psychic world is how can you be psychic and still have anxiety at the same time and really know what you're dealing with and what is you and what isn't you.
That's a really good question.
It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question, which has many fascinating rabbit holes to explore.
Yeah.
Because when you are a sensitive person, and you can be a sensitive person and not consider yourself psychic or intuitive at all. The New Age community has a lot of people who refer to themselves as empaths.
Right.
Meaning they feel what someone else is feeling, or they hear a story and it's just like this sadness or this anxiety comes up in them and they relate, and it takes on a life of its own almost sometimes. And separating and detaching from that is extremely challenging. So I think your question is very, very important. So some of the answers are complicated. Number one, what we're seeing today seems to be an epidemic of anxiety.
Right.
Part of that social media. Mm-hmm. And if you're feeling enormous anxiety for the things you're seeing and hearing, go a week and don't listen to the news. Go a week and don't do Facebook or Twitter or even Instagram. LinkedIn is not so much, but those three are the big ones. There's so many things happening. There's atrocities. There's anger. And so many people are angry.
Yep.
And if we could step back from the anger a little bit, you're going to have up and down days. If you're psychic, you have to learn how to build protection for yourself, layers of protection. And I almost hate to use the word protection, but let's change the word from protection perhaps to insulation. Mm-hmm. When I work with clients, I hear things that make the angels weep. I cannot believe parents would perpetrate such violence on children, or someone who was gang raped by her brothers from the time she was 10.
Yeah.
That's a lot of anxiety. That's a lot of rage. That's a lot of anger. And when you have serious trauma like that, it's like it shaves away bits and pieces of your very soul. Mm-hmm. And you can't just get over it. You can't say, well, that was yesterday and today's another day and just get on with living.
Right.
If you could do that, you would.
Right.
Psychiatric help is basically drugs and talk therapy where, tell me how you feel about this. Well, when this happened, how did you feel? That's good to an extent, but you need some real tools to enable you to bring what happened into perspective. But it goes a little deeper than that. And actually, my sister and I had this very discussion yesterday morning. What happens if it's past life? What happens if You're seeing or feeling something and you're having a response to it out of proportion
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then that could very well be past life. And your subconscious is going, danger, Will Robinson, danger, danger, we have to get out of here. Or, oh, this is so horrible. Or I feel this. I feel.
Right.
You don't want people to stop feeling, then they become robotic. And we have enough of the AI stuff that's entering our world and creating another level of fear.
Right.
So, what is the answer? My suggestion, if I could offer it, is multifaceted. The first thing is write down what you're afraid of. Make it visible to you. This is my fear. If you're worried about a family member, a spouse, write down this is your fear. And when you're afraid for them, you're giving them your fear. I mean, I have 3 children, and to get your kids to, my kids are in their 40s now, to get your kids to any age, you're going to go through the trauma of what if.
Right.
And, oh, this could happen. You are in a perilous place of giving your children your fear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a spiritual law that says what you fear the most, you attract. You don't want to attract the thing that you're the most worried about.
Right.
Give your family members, your children, your coworkers, your confidence in them. And let's say that you're a mom and you have a teenage driver. Have you prepared that child, that teen, for driving? How early did you start backing in and out of the driveway? Did you give that child your confidence? There's so many wrecks with teenagers, so many angry teenagers. And whenever there is an accident, something in somebody's life is filled with anger, frustration, rage. That means that they're wearing this, which puts them in resonance with an accident.
Right.
When you shift that and say, I have confidence in you, and I can give you an example. When my son was 17, he and my daughter went to the mall shopping at Christmas time in San Diego, and it was pouring. In San Diego, nobody knows what to do in the rain. They're all really crazy, and it's scary. And if I was a fearful mother, I would have said, you cannot go out tonight because it's raining. And my children would rightly have said to me, what, are we never going to learn to drive in the rain? Are you never going to trust us on a rainy day? They would have been justified in saying that. So I took a deep breath, and as they got into the car to back out, I looked at my daughter and I said, I want you to pay a close attention to your brother. He is the most outstanding driver. He is kind, he is patient, and he is wise. He can sense what's happening. I want you to pay attention to what an amazing driver your brother is and learn from him. And my son looked at me, and he wanted to say something, but he just smiled and he said, I know what you're doing. And I said, I hope so. And so they left, and about 4 hours later, they came back, and my daughter pops out of the car. She says, oh my God, people were crazy, but you were right about James. He's an amazing driver. I felt really safe with him. This is, for me, a practical example of giving someone your confidence. Sorry about that. Not your fear. You can tell this is a powerful thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. You have a question?
I do. So what would you say to somebody that is feeling this way about themselves? How would you instill that confidence in yourself? Maybe not even in a driving scenario, but just in life in general. If they're having anxieties or having fears, how do you channel that energy that you can put into somebody else back into yourself? Because sometimes self-love and self-confidence is, you can have confidence in everybody else in the world, but when it comes to you, it seems to be harder.
That's very true. I think that I would say that's true for, especially for women, but men suffer the same.
Right.
And I feel as if we are in a time and place in history where we are taught not to love ourselves, that we're always finding fault. We're not pretty enough, or our eyelashes aren't strong enough, or our pecs aren't big enough, or whatever we are isn't enough.
Right.
And that could have been perpetuated by something a parent or a teacher or a coworker or, the mean girls in high school said. None of us comes here without the experiences we're supposed to have. When you look in the mirror and you decide something about you isn't good enough, you start beating yourself up, and you can create a downward spiral.
Right.
Part of this is talking to yourself, and this is why so many people use affirmations. That's one of the things in the Everyday Karma book, The Lightworker's Guide to Everyday Karma, because in this book I talk about this. Whatever we think we are doesn't ever appear to be good enough. But what if it is? What if what we are, we look in the mirror, is good enough? What if we make a mistake? Make a mistake.
Right.
And then own up to the mistake and work on what you learned from it. And everybody has a first day.
Mm-hmm.
About that. You have a first day as you're born. You have a first day walking, a first day fill in the blank, first day as a parent. Oh my gosh, nobody comes with directions. When you can see yourself as whole, perfect, and complete, then you are making great progress. That's very easy for me to say. But if you have been programmed from an early age by words that completely destroyed your self-confidence. I had lunch with somebody like that. She said, you're so confident, but I was told that, I was pretty much a worthless person, and I've struggled with this all my life. Right. This woman is almost 70. Okay. And you want to reach out and hug somebody and say, oh my gosh, that's not true. You're an amazing person. But inside of her, she doesn't see that. Mm-hmm. She can't see that. And I wasn't in a position to actually counsel her. And so we talked about how did that come about? What did her mother say? And what happened to her mother? If you look at your parent and your parent had a lot of emotional problems, mm-hmm. maybe it wasn't about you. It's about that person who could never be happy.
Right.
Especially if you have a parent, it won't matter what you do. You aren't ever going to please them. Mm-hmm. It was true for my mother. No matter what any of us did, there were four of us, four kids. It was never enough. And there was a moment when I realized that it won't matter whether I get her to the top of Mount Everest or the Grand Canyon or the Redwood Forest. It will never be enough. It will never make her happy. Why am I trying?
Right.
She has to decide what makes her happy. I don't. When there's a wonderful book by Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. And I would love people to buy my books, but I have to say there's some other wonderful authors out there. And Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, it has rainbows on it. And she healed herself from terminal cancer twice because she grew up and had a horrific childhood. I don't remember all the details. They're probably not worth repeating. What I can say is that she learned that the programming as a child sets you up for long-term illness, abuse, depression, all of those things. And in her book, she says she makes this astounding statement. It's only a thought, and a thought can be changed. That's a direct quote from Louise Hay's book. It's only a thought. When you start seeing your parents as children, when you can go back and see what they said to you that's causing the current anxiety you have today, or the lack of self-confidence, or feeling like you weren't good enough or pretty enough or smart enough or fill in the blank enough, because maybe that was your parents' inadequacy,
Right.
may not necessarily have been yours. He has an entire process you can go through that will help you to heal that and gain insight into yourself. It's work.
Right.
A minute, you have a question.
I think that something that I'm seeing in today's generation is I'm in my early 20s, my mid 20s. And so my parents grew up with their parents from a completely different era and generation than me and my peers will grow up with, even that you grew up in. And it seems like the longer in time we go, the more we talk about things. And my perspective of people, of trauma that you go through or baggage that happens in your life is, and maybe not on a spiritual aspect, because in some regard you do ask for it because you plan your life and all that. But I didn't get to choose, as Chloe, as who I am right now, what happened to me and what my parents went through. So my parents went through what they went through. They gave it to me, and now I'm holding the bag, right? It wasn't my fault. It had nothing to do with me. You know, what happened to me was a reflection of what happened to them and what they grew up knowing. But now I'm holding the bag. And so I think that maybe in past generations, people have been holding the bag and they've passed on the bag. And a theme that I'm seeing among people in my age group is we're not going to pass the bag anymore. We're going to hold the bag, we're going to sit with the bag, and we're going to go through it. Because unfortunately, trauma doesn't come with a gift receipt. You can't give it back. Just because it wasn't something that you did or that, you know, you deserved doesn't mean it's not there anymore. You have it, now you got to deal with it. And so I think that I'm seeing a lot of people my age, and even, I mean, my mom, she's in her early 50s, she's going to therapy and talking about stuff. And, you know, people have gotten more comfortable with talking about the things they used to not talk about and processing the things they used to not process. And I think that's something we're going to see going forward is hopefully our generation will be a lot better about passing on things that have happened to them in the past. Because I have a good grasp on looking at my parents and saying, okay, this is why it happened to you this way. My birth mother is an immigrant from the Eastern Europe, and she had a horrific childhood. And so she gave me a horrific childhood, and I understand why she did that. However, I'm still stuck with the bag. And so now it's, what do I do with it? So I think that's something that, I don't know if you feel the same way, that you're seeing that kind of grow in terms of spiritual growth and people evolving in modern day.
I do. And I think that's an astute observation. I think more and more people are willing to work with a coach to help them work through things. The days of sitting on a couch and saying, gee, how do you feel? You need to really understand the karma of a situation. Even though what happened with your parents and how it was perpetrated on you may have been terrible, doesn't mean that you have to perpetuate it.
Right.
And that's how these things get perpetuated. And when you can finally realize that perpetuation is why we have such a messed up world.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you can change the things, you can change moving forward with what happened. But there's a factor here, and it's the subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And as an example, I am the daughter of an immigrant. My father was born in Beirut, Lebanon, and came here through Ellis Island as became a U.S. citizen and did the whole thing. So, and my mother's heritage is Polish. So I have this unusual combination. The subconscious of a person is frozen at the age of their earliest trauma. So my grandfather died when my father was 6 years old. That trauma was massive for him. And his subconscious was frozen at that level. We want to believe that our parents, that we put them on a pedestal, are perfect. They are completely mortal and completely fallible and grew up and harm us. They really do harm us. Depending on the age of your trauma, you can begin to help your subconscious grow by learning to listen to your subconscious and respond in a way that the subconscious feels heard.
Can you give me an example of that?
I'll use myself. We're all driven. Well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of us are driven. I have to get this done and this done and this done, and we live a life of lists.
Mm-hmm.
All these things that have to be done today. But what I find is my subconscious says, I want to rest today. You can do your podcast, but I want a break. I want to rest, and I want to do something else. And if I don't listen, I find that I don't feel well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I listen to my subconscious and honor the request, then the next day I have energy to burn. I get all the things on the list. They're still going to be done. And the reason this is important to understand is that your conscious self is having this conversation. Your subconscious self is making your eyes blink and your heart beat and your brain work. The job of the subconscious part of us is to keep us alive, to keep us safe, and to keep the body functioning in tip-top shape. That is the job of the subconscious. When the conscious and the subconscious don't see eye to eye, you have loggerheads.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when you're no longer at ease, you're in dis-ease. And then all these things can start to happen to the body. I had somebody contact me yesterday. They're in the ER and they were having horrific pain. And I could see that the liver was horribly inflamed. Well, the liver's anger. Well, I know why she's so angry. And then I said, I think you have diverticulitis and here, and here, and I can see this. And sure as the devil, his diverticulitis. And it's serious. And she's got a problem with kidney function. Her creatinine level's way too high. Kidneys are grief, old, angry, putrefying grief. And when none of that is addressed, when you keep pushing and pushing and pushing yourself and you don't say stop, we have to look at this, then the subconscious has no choice but to slow you down. A broken leg, a car accident, an illness, you can't get up, you don't understand. So all of those things are controlled by the subconscious. Now, if the subconscious sees you enter a situation and that part of you becomes incredibly fearful, you end up with enormous anxiety. That's partly where this anxiety is coming from. Your conscious self sees this, is not sure what to make of it, but the subconscious says, oh, I'm really afraid. That's, I think, to a large degree, what you're talking about happening.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have to ask yourself is, and I think I saw this happening a lot in 2020, 2021, and it began to ease off in 22, but it's still going on today. When that happens, you have to get a grip on yourself and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of here? I heard this on the news. What am I afraid of? Or what am I angry about? And literally write it down. If something triggers a memory from childhood, I had somebody else call me and they said, you know, my daughter found something out and she thinks her boyfriend is not necessarily this good guy. And, what should I do? And I said, but why are you so concerned? And apparently she felt betrayed by a guy she was dating. She went right back to that place. That sense of betrayal just took her like lickety split right back. Well, in that moment, we were able to discuss it and bring it to the surface. And I said, but here's the interesting thing. You still got married. You still trusted your husband. You've been married, 38 years now? Okay. So you still were able to move forward. You learned from the betrayal, but it didn't stop you from trusting love. You learned something, you learned the signs, and it was an experience you can value. So if you are triggered by a fear, You have a couple pathways. You can ask yourself, what am I so afraid of? And let's say that you have let's say that you're married to a police officer and your spouse goes out on patrol. You never know what's going to happen. Can you imagine that that's your anxiety day after day after day, that you're going to get the knock on the door with the policeman and the grim faces, and you live with this anxiety and it builds in your head. It builds and it builds and it builds. So you're giving your spouse your fear, not your confidence. And this actually happened to me because my husband was captain of an oil rig for 5 years. And that's what your pants terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
First day on the job, Deepwater Horizon blew up. So it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have 5 years of anxiety. What am I going to do? And I did something that I have suggested to other people that they look at, and that is, what you fear the most, you attract, and you don't want to attract it, then you have to face the fear. So what if your anxiety is such that you face the fear and you say, all right, what's the worst that could happen? I get the phone call. I'm going to face the grief. You can't go through life without grief. I'm going to face it. Then what's going to happen? Well, I have to call the children. And then what's going to happen? Well, I have to call this person. I have to make arrangements. And then what's going to happen? And what I realized was, I'm still going to be all right. I will miss him. I will still go through what I need to go through, but I'll still be all right. And I'll be grateful for the time we had. Mm-hmm. Because what happened was, every time he came home, I was angry. I was angry when he was gone and terrified, and then angry when he was home because he was going to go put himself in harm's way again. Mm-hmm. Once I had that epiphany and I shed a whole night's worth of tears, I wasn't afraid anymore because I've already faced the worst that could happen. Mm-hmm. If you're watching the news and it's triggering something in you, you have to stop and say, why is this making me so upset? Talk to yourself. Sometimes if you talk to a friend who has no capacity to guide you, that's not always the best move. Mm-hmm. But asking yourself, what are you so afraid of in this scenario? And yeah, go ahead.
This is a good kind of segue into the thing that made me want to ask you this question, which was, when you do have anxiety and you do kind of have fear of the unknown and uncertainty, when you are bogged down by information, especially if it's contradicting, it can make you just completely spiral out. So you were just talking about trusting yourself, talking to yourself, it's okay, it's fine. We've talked about that gut instinct. You talk about that a lot, and intuition and whatever else. How do you differentiate between all the noise that's happening in your head? Because then you're thinking, okay, well, what if this blows up? What if this happens? What if he gets hurt here? What if happens there? And it becomes harder to hear that one little voice in your head that's your gut instinct saying, it's going to be fine. I'm going to be okay. It's going to be all right. How do you get to that point of acceptance and of drowning out the noise when there's so much interference?
You have to turn down the noise. I mean, I hate to be blunt, but get off of Facebook. Get off of social media for a while. For some people, maybe that's not an option. When you're bombarded by what you're hearing, you make a lot of decisions. Is this true? Is this not true? Should I be upset about this? Should I not be upset about it? We have to make, someone gave me an estimate of 65,000 decisions a day. Oh. You know, maybe 100 years ago, somebody made 2,500 decisions a day.
Right.
But every time you're clicking through social media, you're hearing news or you're listening to a podcast, do I believe this? Do I not believe this? Is this true? Is this not true? What should I do? Is this AI? I shared something recently that looked so real. And my youngest son was so upset because he said, that's AI. I said, I didn't know that.
Was it the catacombs, the Egyptian catacombs?
Yeah.
You emailed me. Yeah, I thought that was cool.
I thought it was cool. And I was so excited because I thought we're going to see this in my lifetime. And I kind of got royally skewered by my youngest son. And so I could feel bad about it. And I've been inside the Great Pyramid. I've seen so much of this firsthand, and it felt so real. So I was fooled. I admit that. I don't think I'm the only one. I think so many of us were so excited about it. Well, I can feel terrible, which I did for a while. And then I realized, well, it's probably not the first time I've been fooled and probably not going to be the last. What was my intention?
Right.
Was to share something that was good news, something that was exciting, that wasn't depressing.
Right.
Genuinely, I didn't realize it was wrong. So when we were faced with what is this, maybe if we turned off the noise and we spent more time in a forest or in the woods or in nature, and we just sit and we develop a larger rapport with our subconscious and our higher self. If we are praying at night and we're building that connection, when you have times that you're quiet and alone and you can hear your own thoughts and you know what's true for you. Was it true for me that was there? It felt like it. Did the world come to an end? Probably not. It's very difficult to hear if you can never turn off the noise.
Right. I guess the question I had was the noise, because for me, the noise isn't outside. It's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's not podcasts. It's within me. The noise is within my own head. And so if you have 25 thoughts racing, I know that we've talked about it. This is a good segue into this question as well. What is depression? What is anxiety? What is bipolar disorder? What is OCD or ADHD when it comes to the civilian, or I'm not civilian, the military and he's coming out when it comes to the spiritual world, because we have this connection. Like modern medicine has established that there's a brain body connection, right? Whatever's happening in your brain is going to affect your body. That's what you're talking about, the subconscious. And so that is recognized. That is scientifically proven. But there's such a disconnect between, okay, well, if you can accept that maybe having mental health issues is affecting your gut and giving you ulcers, why is it so hard to accept that maybe there's interference happening on the other side? Because part of the noise also could be, how do you know what's yours and what's not anything like a lower realm intelligence that you talk about in your books, and what's not, somebody else's?
I guess I'm dancing around this. We have thousands of satellites in the sky.
Right.
We have millions, it feels like, of cell phone towers. There are a lot of frequencies being broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very complicated when we ask ourselves what's causing this anxiety, because I've had more than one phone call on this. And what I'm finding is you have to change the frequency that's surrounding you. And when you are bombarded with a lower frequency range, and again, there's a wonderful book, which I mention in the Psychic Children book and the list of books at the end, Power versus Force, talks about frequency. To settle your mind and clear it, you can listen to Mozart or Chopin or Rachmaninoff. Classical music, the higher the frequency, the clearer your thoughts will be. In fact, we actually listen to the solfeggio frequencies all night long. When I wake up in the morning, there are no flooding of thoughts. I can hear my conscious self, my subconscious saying, you need to remember this, or we remembered this, or you need to call or take care of, or you were worried about this, but you don't need to be. It's all okay. So when you raise the frequency around you through music, through feng shui, through decluttering, through using as much of a Faraday cage as you can possibly get that surrounds you, turn your phone off at night, put it in a Faraday cage. It's just a container. Are you still there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You put them, you have to do physical things to shut out the noise, to shut out the bombardment of frequencies. I mean, yes, it can be a lot of what's going on inside of you. This is a start. It's not the only thing. Bathe at night, bathe with salt. Make sure you wash your feet with salt, unless you have a septic tank. Can't do that. But when you wash your feet, you're picking up a lot of negativity. There's a lot of darkness right now. I mean, it's as bad as it was in World War II and Vietnam and all these other times. There's a lot of anger and hate that's resonating, literally surrounding us. When you are in a forest, I mean, I think the Japanese call it forest bathing, all of that is mitigated, especially a pine forest. I learned that from an Egyptian architect. Pine forest absolutely blocks out a lot of these frequencies, and you are feeling that you are alone with your own thoughts. And maybe that's what you're getting at. How am I alone with my own thoughts? Because are they my own or are they being planted? And I actually did have someone who had planted thoughts, and we were able to identify where it came from, which was pretty chilling. The thoughts that were planted were so insidious that she was completely unable to do a single suggestion that I made for her. And one of them was to get away from the 5G towers, even for 45 minutes, to see if what she was hearing continued. They were actually planting thoughts in her brain that were including photographs that they picked up on her phone, because she had her phone inside her pillowcase on at night. It was a little bit unnerving when she told me that. And so she put it in a Faraday cage, she put it in another room, and her sleep improved. But she needed to do a lot more. Grounding sheets and pillowcases that ground you to the earth, that anchor you to the earth, will stop a lot of anxiety. So you're using grounding sheets.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, the sheets have wires that run through them, and they connect to a ground, the ground in the wall socket. Especially if you're on the second floor, or you're in an apartment building. How do you ground yourself? Walking in grass, barefooted, will electrically ground you to the earth, and it will clear up a lot of this negativity. These are mechanical things. You just need to stay in touch with the earth. You know, going barefooted in sand or in the ocean or grass when you can. The grounding sheets, Amazon sells them, lots of places sell them, eBay sells them, big box stores sell them for all sizes of beds. You just plug them in and they're completely machine washable. Play solfeggio frequencies at night. So your brain and your subconscious are hearing healing frequency all night long. Don't listen to low frequency music. Don't listen to rap music or hard rock or acid rock. It will lower your frequency. To reduce anxiety, raise your frequency. And in Karma and Frequency, I talk about all the different things you can do to remove from your life and the things to add to your life, and do it a step at a time so you don't have a Herx reaction or a healing reaction. You've changed so many things. The anxiety will start to decrease. Take a look at your diet. Make sure that your diet is as clean as possible. Don't drink alcohol. Alcohol is so toxic. First of all, it's not organic. It's heavily sprayed. You're getting a lot of bad things in your wine and your beer and whatever you're drinking. The other thing is, when during the day, take some time out for yourself. And when you are in a place where you learn to hear your own thoughts, is this me? And you're questioning it. What you're doing is you're questioning it. Are these really my thoughts? And if the answer is no, well, there you go. And look at the drugs you're taking. One of the chilling statistics is that every mass shooter is on some sort of antidepressant drug because one of the side effects is suicide or murderous ideation. And so if you're not on any of those things and you're still having this, one of the other elements is something called pyroluria, Pyroluria. This was discovered by a physician in Illinois or Iowa, some flat state. And it had to do with the chemistry of the brain. When you're concerned about your thoughts, what's going on in the chemistry of the brain? And what they found out was that when a person had suffered 3 massive shocks, their personalities changed. A mental illness started to appear because the chemistry in the brain had radically changed. It's true for alcoholics, sometimes schizophrenics. They had not enough pyroxidine, which is vitamin B6. They didn't have enough manganese or magnesium. They didn't have enough time-release vitamin C. All these people who are saying, have these vitamins, oh my gosh, they're correct. They weren't washing out the toxins they're receiving every day. I use noni juice to do that in French green clay, which keeps the gut and the entire blood supply, because noni, Morinda citrifolia is the Latin name, is a blood cleanser. Mangosteen, acai berry, those are also blood cleansers. I prefer noni, but everybody can find their own. You can't just do one thing to stop these voices. You have to do multiple things. And I had a teenager with murderous ideation in Florida. And she fought all day long, every day, the voices telling her to murder her classmates. This is a severe case of, is it her voice or were there other voices?
Right.
She started smoking at 18. Her mother was freaking out, and there was a 3-way call. And I said, well, stop. And I asked her, I said, did your murderous ideation cease when you get it reduced when you started smoking? And she said, yes. How did you know? I said, because smoking is a vasoconstrictor. It constricts your blood vessels. So you weren't getting as much adrenaline. When these voices are talking to you, it's triggering adrenaline in the brain. If you've suffered trauma, what happens is a normal person gets this much adrenaline. Somebody with pyroluria gets this much adrenaline. That's why you see crazy drivers on the road.
I'm sorry, do you think that pyroluria is a spiritual way to classify mental disorders like OCD or like schizophrenia or BPD?
I think it's part of the problem because chemically you're out of balance.
Right.
So if you're going to, some things you have a spiritual fix for. Some things are chemical, because the mother kept saying to me, can't you do something chemically? Can't you do something and just spiritually make her better? I said, first of all, she's already 18. I have no jurisdiction. She's an adult. Second of all, when we have to try everything. We tried the entire pyroluria. There's a bunch of them. You can look this up online. You don't have to believe me. This murderous ideation stopped. Think about that. It stopped. I had another case where a boy who was 11 years old, it was terrifying. I could see he actually visited me once. Most of the time I'm doing stuff on the phone, but I watched, he was talking to me and he had green eyes. And then I watched like something enter his body. His eyes turned this soulless black and there was somebody with him. When the mom put him on all the pyroluria supplements, which are all over the counter, she followed it to the leather. She was an acupuncturist, so she understood, because he tried to kill his brother repeatedly. His father was always gone. His grandfather died and his best friend moved away. He had 3 emotional shocks. It threw the brain into a chemical imbalance. having to do with adrenaline that can manifest in murderous ideation, suicidal ideation, OCD, a variety of things. And so once he was on the supplements and he was religious about it, he had friends. He had been hated. His teacher said, "What did you do to him? He's a normal boy." Sometimes what looks like it's a spiritual solution can be chemical. And when we balance the chemistry in the body, which most doctors don't do because they don't study supplements, they don't study body chemistry on that level. Mm-hmm. You have to stop the adrenaline. That's one of the problems with the PTSD, especially for veterans coming back from Iran, Iraq, wherever they are. So much stress, so much demand to perform, so much trauma watching your buddies die. Mm-hmm. So what do? They put them on drugs, and then the suicide rate skyrockets instead of balancing the adrenaline. There's something called Bach flower remedies. There's also botanical alchemy remedies. And what these remedies do is, and I have put together, remedies that are really helpful for myself or my husband or somebody else who wants them. And they're complete. You could drink the whole bottle all at once. It wouldn't hurt you. They're flower remedies, but they completely rebalance the chemistry in the brain and bring you back to a sense of balance. Now, a narcissist, personality disorders, narcissism, immature personality disorder, some of them are born. There's nothing you can do. Serial killers are born. They come in that way because over lifetimes, their souls have been shaved enough that they have to die and be crossed over. And then the next time they won't be perhaps murderous. That doesn't erase the karma of a Jeffrey Dahmer or a Richard Speck or any of the Boston Strangler or any of those people. That still has to be resolved. But and this doctor in Iowa that looked at this said that virtually 100% of the prisoners had pyroluria or massive chemical imbalances. Some of it was copper, some of it was some of the metals or the essential minerals that you must have. So if your food has no nutrition, it can throw you into a different place. So you have to look at the body chemistry, the brain chemistry, and the traumas the person has felt and the amount of adrenaline that's causing them. When my brother died, the stress was tremendous. He died of cancer. He lived with us. My frequency dropped. When you're grieving, your frequency goes right to the floor. I was irritable. I was frustrated. I had an estate to settle, and everybody was upset over his death. And so everybody wants you to help them. Mm-hmm. I was on 15 different remedies in a combination bottle with just spring water. That's what it was. It's just very, very simple. And what it did is it rebalanced all of these energies in my body. I could think to make decisions. I could hear my own higher self. So let me stop for a minute. That's a lot of information. Was that helpful in any way?
It was. I think it covered a lot of the stuff that I was going to ask you that was a good follow-up because, therapy is everywhere now. Therapy is everywhere. Everything is, a lot of people are on medication, which there's nothing, wrong with it. I don't want to sit here and say if you're on medication, then you're wrong or whatever, because you're not. If you need it in that moment, then take it. I was prescribed medication. I made the choice not to take it because I didn't honestly want to deal with the effects of going through it. The doctor said, I'm going to give you a heads up. Whatever you're going through is going to be 10 times worse for the next 2 weeks. And I'm good. I think I'm going to try to manage it on my own. And that was my own choice. But, it's such a culture now of therapy is the big push and medication is the big push. And I think that's better than the alternative of we're not going to talk about it and everybody bottle everything up and don't address anything. But I was initially going to come in and ask you how you feel like the spiritual practices that you practice and that we talk about translates over to conventional therapy. Because something that I find helpful is maybe not necessarily the talk therapy, but in addition to doing all the stuff that I do spiritually, it also helps for me to talk about it and get it out in the open. And so I hope that people are doing these things together, because together they're a powerhouse. You know, like there's nothing, no, I don't feel like for myself there could be any negatives to talking about stuff and getting it on the open. And that's just for me personally. But I was going to ask you how you feel like conventional therapy and spiritual practices can go hand in hand. But I mean, with all the grounding and the supplements, I think you've covered a lot of it. So,
Well, I believe that you have to talk about it, especially things that happened from childhood. If you were raped, I mean, you have to talk about it.
right.
You have to talk about how you felt, the betrayal that you felt. Yes, you have to talk about it. But you're in the talking about it, you have to ask God to help you. There's no healing without God. And whether somebody's Christian or they're not Christian is irrelevant. There's no religion in the afterlife. When you get to the higher realms, there's Buddha and Christ and Sri Krishna. And I mean, there's some amazing beings there. That's why I wrote the Crossing Over Prayer book, because there are prayers in there. Let's say that you heard about all the fires in Los Angeles or the flooding in North Carolina, and you sent prayers to those people. You didn't send them your fear. You sent positive healing prayer. You're not helpless. Oh, I see these terrible things happening. There's nothing I can do. There is something you can do. You can pray. Prayer is an energy, and it follows the physics laws of string theory and quantum entanglement. So you're sending prayers to people you don't even know.
Right.
Well, based on string theory, they are going to feel it. Things can get better for them even if it's the smallest level. Maybe they have a better day the next day. You are not powerless. And that Carolyn Meese talks about this as well. She was in an accident. There's a story of a woman who was in an accident. Everybody, the traffic was backed up. And she left her body. This particular story, a woman left her body, and she could see this light coming from this car. This woman was praying that that whoever was in the accident survived and that they were not injured. And then she came back into her body. She could hear the prayer. So there's so many powerful stories of evidence. That's why in the Psychic Children, Psychic People book, there are so many spiritual practices. That's why the companion book is the Crossing Over Prayer book. I have people who are now saying 10 to 12 different prayers a night for people they don't know. They're not helpless anymore. Part of fear is helplessness. When you are not helpless, you are empowered. And when you marry spiritual practice with balancing your brain chemistry, and you stop feeling powerless, you remind yourself you are powerful, do what you can do. And there is nothing else that you can do. I can only do the best I can in this moment. All those other voices don't matter. What matters is at the end of the day, when I look in the mirror, did I give the world my best? Most people don't wake up and say, think I'll be a stinker today. They don't. Most people are very good. Reminding yourself and maybe another person of your goodness. And if you have to take cortisol or, because these are over the counter, or phosphodidol or P5P, which is vitamin B6, and they strengthen the whole auric body because it's being bombarded by these often toxic frequencies, do that too. Do everything. Don't just say, well, like if I did this, it'll be okay. Do them, layer. You don't wear underpants in Wisconsin in the winter outside.
Right.
You have to have layers and layers and layers of clothing to be able to withstand what you're going to face in a cruel, harsh environment. Spiritually, what you've identified is a very cruel and harsh environment right now. Do everything, the chemical, the food, the spiritual, turning off the noise, grounding yourself. All of these things build you up, especially I would say, especially the Bach flower remedies and the botanical alchemy remedies. There's something called unstress. There's another one called light and grief. Oh my God, if you're grieving, you can hardly get out of bed. Mm-hmm. So it's everything. It's not just one thing. If I said, well, if you just do this, it'll all be great, it would be a lie. I just couldn't do that. I can't begin to tell people how many different things I do. I have heavily feng shuied my house. Heavily. I've got salt in all the corners, creating 45-degree angles. All the things that are in the Psychic Children book, I do all those. So higher frequency and happiness. And the other piece of this puzzle is gratitude. Every day when you wake up, be grateful. Every night when you go to bed, be grateful for something that happened that day, or that you're alive, or that there's someone loves you, or that you have food on your table. Be grateful for something, because gratitude fills your body with light. You want as much light in your body as you possibly can. When you're filling your body with light, you can shift a great deal of the darkness, quiet those voices, and begin to hear your higher self far more. Okay. How are we doing?
I think we're doing great.
Okay. Well, we're at almost an hour.
Okay.
And I think that these were great questions. And, we've given everybody a lot to think about and what they can process and make work for them. There's been mental illness for a very long time.
Right.
But maybe because people are talking about it, it's being discussed on all kinds of podcasts. Mm-hmm. People won't feel so afraid. I know someone told me recently that if you have an alcohol addiction in the military and you tell your superiors, they get you help. They don't fire you.
Immediately. Yep.
And that they are grateful that you said something rather than having an accident or suicide. Mm-hmm. It's a massive shift from the military, I knew.
Right.
And it's a welcome shift. So, Chloe, if you have any more questions or things come up, let me know and we'll do it. So we want to thank everyone for listening. Psychic Children, Psychic People can be found on Amazon. GhostHelpers.com is the website. And if you've read the book, write to me at contact@GhostHelpers.com and maybe we'll do a show and we'll answer questions. Chloe, thank you again for being here, and we'll talk soon.